In the farthest reaches of the planet, where the horizon disappears into a blinding ocean of white, the Arctic breathes. It moves in silence, glaciers drifting like ancient beasts, mountains sculpted by centuries of frozen wind, and a sky that burns with light even in the darkest hours. Beneath its serene surface lies an untold story, one of motion, of life, of a landscape that seems eternal yet changes with every heartbeat of the earth. This is not the Arctic of myths. This is the real one. A realm of beauty and brutality, of silence that roars with the echoes of time. A place where ice itself becomes an architect, carving cathedrals, shaping mountains, and building worlds unseen. What secrets hide within the shifting glaciers? What voices whisper in the winds that sweep across its endless plains? The answers lie beneath the surface, beneath the shimmering veil of snow and silence, where the Arctic reveals the truth of an ever-changing world. If you're ready to journey into the heart of the frozen north, where mountains move and ice breathes, like, share, and subscribe. Because what you're about to see will change how you see the white frontier forever. The Arctic is not still. It never was. Beneath its deceptive calm, a slow and ceaseless movement unfolds, an ancient rhythm that has sculpted the face of the earth for millions of years. To the human eye, it seems eternal, vast, motionless, and absolute. But listen closely, and you can hear it breathe. The low groan of shifting glaciers, the subtle crack of ice under tension, the whisper of snow carried by the wind. Each sound is part of a vast symphony of motion, a frozen tide that moves not in seconds or minutes, but in centuries. The awakening of ice begins deep within the heart of the Arctic's glaciers, where pressure, time, and temperature weave a delicate balance. Snow falls layer upon layer, year after year, compacting into firn, then into solid ice. With every passing winter, the glacier grows heavier, denser, and older, pressing down on the world beneath it. The ice begins to deform, stretching like molten glass, sliding imperceptibly under its own weight. It is slow, but unstoppable, a living river of frozen time, grinding mountains to dust, carving valleys that will outlast civilizations. From above, the glaciers appear silent, sculpted in still perfection. But beneath the surface, they are alive, shifting, groaning, shaping the land in ways both subtle and cataclysmic. Fractures open and close like lungs inhaling and exhaling. Streams of meltwater carve tunnels through the ice, carrying minerals, sediment, and the memory of distant ages. This movement is not chaos. It is rhythm. The glacier breathes in cycles, expanding in cold centuries, retreating in warmth, responding to forces older than history itself. The Arctic landscape is born from this slow dance between freezing and melting. Mountains rise as ice retreats, valleys flood as glaciers release their hold. The land is not merely shaped by ice, it is defined by it. Beneath each frozen ridge lies the memory of transformation. Beneath each still lake, the remnant of a glacier that once thundered across the land. The ice is not the enemy of life. It is its architect, carving, shaping, preserving, and renewing. Beneath the ice, heat from the Earth's core seeps upward, creating a fragile boundary between solid and liquid. Here, where pressure prevents freezing, subglacial water forms, a hidden network of lakes and rivers that lubricate the glacier's base. These waters act like veins, allowing the ice above to flow more freely, accelerating its silent descent toward the sea. Each movement beneath the glacier sends ripples across the landscape, invisible yet monumental. The ground bends, fractures, and reforms, its very shape molded by the slow heartbeat of the ice. To stand upon a glacier is to stand on history in motion. Every crystal of ice beneath one's feet holds ancient air, tiny bubbles that once drifted in prehistoric skies. In those bubbles lie the whispers of past climates, the breath of creatures long extinct, the signatures of volcanic winters and warm interludes. Scientists read these frozen archives like sacred texts, decoding the story of Earth's atmosphere, tracing the ebb and flow of carbon, oxygen, and life itself. The glacier is not merely frozen water. It is memory made visible, a library of time preserved in the stillness of ice. But even as it endures, the glacier remembers motion. Gravity pulls relentlessly. Pressure mounts. The ice fractures and reforms. Crevasses open like wounds, revealing shades of blue so deep they seem otherworldly, a light that exists only where darkness reigns. The glacier moves with purpose, inch by inch, carrying with it rocks, sediment, and the weight of ages. When it meets the sea, it breaks, immense icebergs shearing away in thunderous collapse, drifting into the Arctic Ocean like silent monuments of impermanence. This is the awakening of the ice, not a beginning, but a continuation. Each crack, each flow, each collapse is a moment in a story that has no end. The Arctic breathes through its glaciers, and through them, the Earth remembers how to change. The glacier's journey is slow, but its power is absolute. Over centuries, it sculpts mountains into sharp ridges and grinds ancient rocks into fine dust. Glacial flour, a mineral mist that drifts across the air and settles into oceans, feeding plankton, the foundation of life itself. What begins as frozen water becomes the invisible architect of ecosystems far beyond the Arctic's reach. The ice is not merely a prisoner of cold. It is a force that shapes continents, influences weather, and dictates the rhythm of the seas. Each glacier is unique, a living organism with its own anatomy and temperament. At its surface, the wind sculpts patterns into hard-packed snow, sinuous lines and ridges that shimmer beneath the pale Arctic sun. Beneath, the glacier's belly slides across bedrock, grinding, crushing, reshaping. Between ice and earth lies a thin film of meltwater, a mirror in perpetual motion. It is here that the glacier's true character emerges, not as frozen death, but as dynamic transformation. The pressure of its weight melts the ice below, while refreezing above seals fractures and renews its strength. Through this delicate cycle, the glacier survives, moving steadily forward, even in the harshest cold. But to understand the Arctic's awakening, one must witness its contrasts, the tension between stillness and motion, creation and collapse. Under the glow of an endless twilight, the ice appears eternal. Yet it moves quietly and constantly, like the turning of the planet itself. Whole valleys vanish beneath its advance, rivers change course, and mountains are worn down grain by grain. What took nature millennia to build can be erased in moments when the glacier surges, a sudden, unstoppable rush that can carry boulders the size of buildings and reshape entire landscapes in a single season. As glaciers advance, they consume everything in their path. Rocks are ground to sand, forests are buried, rivers diverted. But when they retreat, they reveal the bones of the earth, valleys carved smooth by the weight of ages, moraines marking their passage, and lakes born from the remnants of their slow withdrawal. The Arctic is both destroyer and creator, its cycles of ice and thaw leaving behind new worlds. Where once there was only ice, now moss grows, rivers flow, and the first green returns to the land. It is nature's paradox that from destruction comes renewal, and from silence, life. In the vast emptiness of the Arctic, time itself feels different. Here, the sun lingers low on the horizon, stretching shadows across endless plains of white. The air is sharp, still, almost sacred. The ice reflects light in hues of blue and gold, colors that seem to belong to another world. To stand in this place is to feel both infinitesimal and infinite, a single heartbeat against the rhythm of deep time. The Arctic does not hurry. It endures. Its patience is older than memory. Beneath the surface, forces unseen continue their work. Heat from the Earth's crust seeps upward, creating pockets of liquid water beneath the frozen mass. Here, Under kilometers of ice, life persists. Microbial colonies feeding on minerals, evolving in isolation for millennia. These hidden ecosystems are the Arctic's most profound secret. Life surviving in a world of cold and darkness, proving that existence finds a way even where it should not. Each microscopic organism is a testament to resilience, a living echo of the first forms of life that appeared on Earth. When scientists drill deep into the ice, they're not just collecting samples. They're listening to history. Each layer tells a story of volcanic winters that darkened the sky, of warm ages when the poles were seas, of human eras yet unborn. Tiny bubbles of trapped air carry the breath of the ancient world, whispers from a time before civilization. Through them, we learn not only of climate and chemistry, but of ourselves, of how our world has changed, and how it continues to do so beneath our feet. The awakening of the ice is not something we witness in moments, but in generations. It moves at the speed of patience, reshaping worlds while we are busy with our fleeting concerns. Yet in every crack that echoes through the frozen silence, in every glacier that calves into the sea, we are reminded that even the most ancient things are alive. The Arctic is not asleep. It is dreaming in motion. And one day, that dream will wake the world. As the Arctic breathes, the ice sings. It's a low, rumbling hymn, the sound of pressure, of weight, of a world reshaping itself from within. Beneath the frozen surface, deep cracks pulse and shift with each temperature change, producing a symphony of groans and tremors that ripple through the glaciers like a heartbeat. To the untrained ear, it's chaos, random, eerie, alive. But to those who listen closely, these sounds are language. The voice of the Arctic itself, whispering stories older than humanity. There are days when the wind stills, and a silence so pure blankets the horizon that it feels like time itself has stopped. The only movement is the drifting snow, spiraling slowly through pale light, and the faint shimmer of frost blooming across the surface of ancient ice. Yet even in this quiet, motion stirs beneath, slow rivers of frozen water inching their way toward the sea. The Arctic never truly rests. It only pauses, catching its breath before shifting again. When explorers first set foot here, they described the land as lifeless, an endless expanse of white void, untouched and unyielding. But they were wrong. Life exists here, though it hides beneath the frost, breathing through cracks in the ice and dancing in the rare moments when the sun breaks through the clouded sky. The Arctic fox pads silently across the tundra, its coat glowing like a wisp of light. Polar bears roam the frozen seas, patient and deliberate, following instincts honed through generations. In the distance, caribou move like shadows across the snow, their migration a rhythm as ancient as the ice itself. Every creature that calls this place home lives at the edge of survival, but that edge is where nature is most alive. There is no abundance here, no mercy, only balance. Each life taken sustains another. Each thaw feeds a new beginning. The Arctic is not cruel, it is precise. It wastes nothing. And yet, there is a fragility to it, an unspoken vulnerability beneath the grandeur. The glaciers that once stretched unbroken across continents now retreat further each year. Great walls of ice calve into the sea with thunderous cracks, sending waves that echo against distant cliffs. These aren't random events. They're the slow exhalations of a world changing its shape. For every ton of ice that falls, another story ends, one written in frozen time. In the meltwater streams that flow across the ice, something extraordinary occurs. Tiny algae bloom in the sunlight, turning the snow faintly pink or green. What seems lifeless suddenly comes alive, color blooming where none should exist. Scientists call them cryoconite holes, microcosms of survival in a land of extremes. They are reminders that even in places where life should not persist, it adapts, endures, and thrives. When night returns to the Arctic, Though night here is not darkness, but a deep blue eternity, the sky transforms. Curtains of green and violet ripple across the horizon, bending and swaying like living flame, the aurora borealis. To ancient travelers, it was the spirits of the dead dancing above the world. To scientists, it is the collision of solar winds with Earth's magnetic field. To anyone standing beneath it, it is simply wonder made visible, a celestial performance that humbles the heart and silences thought. Under that sky, the ice glows faintly, as if it remembers light from another world. The stars above seem close enough to touch, their reflections trembling across frozen lakes. It's here, in this quiet glow, that the Arctic reveals its true character, not as desolation, but as revelation. It is a mirror, showing humanity both its fragility and its resilience. For in the Arctic, there is no disguise, no noise to distract from truth. Everything that exists fully, raw, exposed, eternal. And somewhere deep within the ice, locked away for 1,000,000 years, are the secrets of that eternity. Ancient lakes sealed from the world's touch. Microbial life suspended in stillness, waiting. The Arctic holds these mysteries in silence, guarding them beneath layers of ice as thick as mountains. They are the heartbeat of a hidden world, one that will soon awaken, reshaping our understanding of what life truly means. As the camera of the mind pulls back, the Arctic stretches beyond sight, an endless white ocean, alive with movement, sound, and memory. The wind howls once more across the glaciers, and the earth turns beneath it, slow and steady. The story of the Arctic is far from over. This is only the beginning, the first whisper of a vast and untold journey into the heart of ice. Beneath the Arctic's frozen heart lies a secret world, one that has never felt the warmth of the sun nor the whisper of wind. Trapped under kilometers of ice are ancient lakes, sealed away from the surface for millions of years. They are time capsules, untouched and untainted, holding within them the echoes of Earth's distant past. For ages, these lakes have existed in complete darkness, isolated by the relentless weight above them. Yet even in this eternal night, life may persist. The story begins not on the surface, but deep below it, in a realm where ice becomes both prison and protector. Over millennia, snow compacted into glacial sheets thicker than mountains. The pressure grew so immense that the lowest layers of ice began to melt, forming pockets of liquid water that refused to freeze despite temperatures far below zero. These hidden chambers became sanctuaries, their waters infused with minerals leached from the rocks beneath. It is here, in this strange and silent underworld, that scientists have discovered entire ecosystems, microbial life thriving in isolation, evolving along its own path since the dawn of time. To reach these lakes is to confront the extremes of exploration. It requires technology built for the impossible, drills capable of piercing through kilometers of solid ice without contaminating what lies below. The goal is not just to see, but to preserve purity, to touch the untouched. For within those icy vaults may lie organisms that have never encountered oxygen, sunlight, or humanity. Each sample drawn from these depths could rewrite the story of life itself. One of the most enigmatic of these hidden worlds is Lake Vostok, buried beneath nearly 4 kilometers of Antarctic ice. For years, it was known only through radar scans and faint gravitational signals, a ghostly reflection on the edge of science. But when drilling finally broke through, the samples that emerged stunned the world. In the dark waters of Vostok, scientists found evidence of microbial life, life that had survived in isolation for more than 15 million years. It was a discovery that blurred the line between Earth and other worlds. For if life can endure here, without sunlight, under crushing pressure, in water colder than any ocean, then it can endure elsewhere. Mars, Europa, Enceladus, the icy moons that orbit distant planets, suddenly seemed less barren, more familiar. The Arctic and Antarctic became mirrors not just of Earth's history, but of our cosmic potential. Beneath the ice, humanity found the blueprint for existence beyond our world. Yet these lakes are not static tombs. They breathe in their own way. The pressure from the ice above pushes water through tiny cracks and fissures, circulating minerals and gases in a delicate balance. The movement is slow, almost imperceptible, but constant, a hidden pulse that keeps the ecosystem alive. To study this circulation is to glimpse an alien rhythm, a planet alive in silence. As scientists lower their instruments into the boreholes, the readings tell stories words cannot. Oxygen levels that rise and fall in mysterious cycles. Chemical traces that suggest metabolism. Organic molecules, fragile, ancient, that whisper of adaptation and survival. Every discovery is a fragment of a puzzle, billions of years in the making. The deeper we go, the more the ice reveals that life is not a miracle of chance, it is an inevitability. In these frozen abysses, one begins to understand time differently. A single droplet of water here may have been sealed before the first humans walked the earth. Every molecule holds a memory. Every current carries the echo of forgotten ages. When light from a probe flickers across these hidden waters, it touches a world that has never seen brightness, a world that waited, patient and undisturbed, for someone to listen. Above, the Arctic storms rage, tearing across glaciers and mountain peaks. But below, in the stillness of those buried lakes, everything remains timeless. They are the quiet counterpoint to the chaos above, the still heart within the restless body of the earth. And, though humanity stands on the edge of unlocking their mysteries, one question remains. If life can endure here, what stories does it have to tell us about our own beginning? The deeper we journey into this hidden realm, the more the Arctic transforms from a landscape into a living memory, a place where the Earth's ancient breath lingers, suspended in crystal silence. Beneath the colossal weight of time, these subglacial lakes pulse softly, their boundaries shifting as ice above them flexes and groans. Each movement, each microscopic vibration, is a whisper of life trapped between worlds, the frozen past and the unknown future. When scientists first began to study the hidden Arctic lakes, they faced not only the cold, but the ghosts of contamination. To breach the ice without corrupting what lay beneath was a challenge of both precision and ethics. The instruments had to be sterile, the methods exact. A single mistake could erase eons of isolation, drowning ancient purity in modern intrusion. And so, each attempt became an act of reverence, not conquest but communion. Humanity, for once, approached the unknown not with dominance, but with humility. In the darkness beneath, a fragile web of life persists, organisms so small, yet so astonishingly adapted that they defy comprehension. Some feed on iron and sulfur. Others survive on the faint chemical whispers released from crushed rock. These microbes form entire ecosystems without sunlight, thriving on what the Earth itself provides, a symbiosis between geology and biology, matter and energy. Their survival tells a story not of abundance, but of endurance, of life that asks for nothing and gives everything in return. Every droplet extracted from these lakes is a revelation. Within them, researchers have found traces of DNA unlike anything on the surface, sequences so alien that they hint at entirely new branches of life's tree. The Arctic is not merely a record of the past. It is a frontier of discovery, challenging the very definitions of existence. What does it mean to be alive when light, air, and warmth are stripped away? When evolution unfolds in darkness, what forms does it take? The water beneath the ice is thick with dissolved gases, methane, carbon dioxide, nitrogen, trapped there for millions of years. Each bubble tells a story of shifting climates, volcanic ages, and the long heartbeat of Earth's atmosphere. To study them is to trace the planet's evolution, molecule by molecule. Yet what fascinates scientists most is not the chemistry, but the resilience. The microbes here have withstood pressures that would crush steel, temperatures that would freeze blood, and isolation that would drive any surface life to extinction. It is easy to forget, standing beneath the auroras, that above these buried oceans lies a world in flux. Ice shelves calve into the sea, rivers of meltwater carve their paths through frozen plains, and the balance between cold and warmth tilts ever so slightly with each passing year. But beneath all that chaos, the subglacial lakes endure, patient, silent witnesses to the shifting fate of the planet. They have seen ages come and go, and they will likely see the next ones rise. When explorers describe the moment the drill finally breaks through the last meter of ice, they speak of awe, of hearing the hiss of escaping gas, of glimpsing the first droplets from an untouched world. There is a moment of silence before the instruments descend, a collective breath held by those who understand the magnitude of what they're about to touch. It is like reaching across time itself, fingers brushing against the edge of creation. Through these discoveries, a pattern emerges. The Arctic is not just a frozen wasteland, but a vast archive of survival. Every layer of ice, every droplet of subglacial water is a record of adaptation. It is as though the planet has been writing its autobiography in ice, an endless chronicle of change, struggle, and rebirth. The more we uncover, the clearer it becomes that the Arctic does not merely reflect Earth's past. It predicts its future. Perhaps that is why these hidden lakes feel sacred. They remind us that life does not vanish when the light fades. It transforms. It digs deeper, moves slower, and becomes something purer. The Arctic's hidden world is not a grave. It is a womb. It holds within it the story of beginnings, of the first cells that stirred in darkness and found a way to endure. Above ground, the polar night stretches across the horizon, and the ice cracks like ancient thunder. But beneath, life continues its patient rhythm, unbroken and unseen. Humanity listens now, poised between reverence and curiosity, knowing that every sound from beneath the ice might be the echo of our own origins calling back to us across the ages. There is a stillness in the depths beneath the Arctic that feels less like silence and more like waiting. The lakes hidden under the ice are not merely bodies of water. They are thresholds, between the known and the forgotten, between the living and the timeless. In their dark isolation, they hold not only secrets of biology but also echoes of memory, whispers of a planet that has frozen and thawed countless times, each cycle leaving a trace of itself in the deep. When light from human instruments first pierced those ancient waters, it was as if two worlds met, one of restless curiosity, the other of eternal calm. The first images revealed an alien beauty, suspended particles glimmering like dust in starlight, ice walls so clear they seemed to swallow the glow of the lamps, and faint currents swirling in slow motion, carrying the soft pulse of unseen life. The scientists who watched those screens described the sensation not as discovery, but as intrusion, as though they had stepped into a cathedral not meant for them. Yet the deeper they looked, the more the water spoke. Chemical analyses told of slow respiration, cycles of carbon and nitrogen continuing through ages of isolation. Microscopic shapes drifted through the samples, filaments, spheres, threads, each one a mystery that defied extinction. These were survivors from a time when the Earth itself was colder, harsher, and newly born. They carried with them the memory of the planet's first breath. It is difficult to imagine what life feels like in such a place. There is no day or night, only perpetual darkness. There is no current strong enough to stir the still waters, no breeze to ripple the surface. Every movement must come from within, a slow metabolism that feeds on the minerals drawn from the rocks below, an ancient rhythm of existence powered by persistence alone. To these organisms, time is not linear. It is circular, an endless loop of survival, silence, and rebirth. Above, the glaciers shift. Their weight presses down, shaping the lake's ceiling, sending waves of pressure that echo through the depths. Each rumble above is a reminder that the world outside still turns. And yet, down here, beneath kilometers of ice, that movement feels distant, like thunder heard from another world. The lakes are isolated, yes, but not dead. They feel, they adapt, they remember. In a sense, they are mirrors, reflecting the resilience of life itself. Just as the ice above them expands and retreats with the ages, life within these hidden waters expands and contracts, finding balance in hardship. It thrives where logic says it should not. It endures where nothing should move. It waits, patient as stone, for the moment when the world above will change enough to set it free. And that moment is coming. The Arctic, once stable and sealed, now trembles beneath the weight of warming. Ice sheets thin, glaciers retreat, and fractures snake deeper each year. For the first time in human history, these ancient lakes are inching closer to exposure. The thought is both thrilling and terrifying. What happens when life, trapped in isolation for millions of years, meets the modern world? What happens when the ancient meets the new? Scientists tread cautiously, aware that some doors, once opened, can never be closed. The possibility haunts them, not of discovery, but of consequence. In those waters may dwell microbes that have never known our world's pathogens, immune systems, or chemistry. Some might perish upon exposure. Others might awaken, adapting in ways we cannot predict. The Arctic's hidden lakes are laboratories of evolution, yes, but they are also vaults of uncertainty. What we find there could redefine our understanding of life, or challenge it entirely. As humanity peers deeper into this frozen abyss, the line between science and philosophy begins to blur. What drives us to uncover what was never meant to be seen? Curiosity, yes, but also reflection. The Arctic, in all its silence, asks us a question. If life can survive here, in darkness, pressure, and solitude, what might it reveal about our own place in the universe? The journey to these hidden lakes is far from over. Each borehole drilled, each sample retrieved, is a step closer to truth, but also a reminder of fragility. For every secret we uncover beneath the ice, another vanishes from the surface, melted away by a warming world. Time, once frozen solid, now runs like water. The Arctic whispers its final warning softly, almost kindly. What is hidden cannot remain so forever. Soon, these buried waters will awaken, not as relics, but as mirrors reflecting what humanity has become. And when that awakening comes, it will not be just the Arctic that changes. It will be us. Ice is not just the Arctic skin. It is the planet's pulse. It breathes with the rhythm of the Earth, expanding and retreating in cycles that span millennia. Every glacier, every frozen plain, is part of a vast and delicate system that regulates the balance of life itself. To understand the Arctic is to listen to this frozen heartbeat, the slow, steady rhythm that keeps the planet alive. From orbit, the Arctic appears as a crown of white encircling the top of the world. But what seems like stillness from afar is anything but. The ice reflects sunlight back into space, cooling the planet in a process known as the albedo effect. Each snowflake becomes a mirror, each frozen field a shield. Together, they keep the Earth's temperature stable, holding back the fever of a warming atmosphere. It is a fragile balance, one that has endured for hundreds of thousands of years, yet now trembles under the weight of change. When the ice melts, the balance falters. Dark ocean water absorbs sunlight instead of reflecting it, amplifying warmth and accelerating the thaw. It's a feedback loop. One small crack becomes a river. One melted season becomes a pattern. The Arctic doesn't just record climate change, it amplifies it. The frozen pulse begins to quicken, beating faster, hotter, louder. Every gust of polar wind, every shift in sea ice, ripples across the globe. Ocean currents, the invisible arteries of the planet, are driven by the difference in temperature and salinity between the poles and the equator. As Arctic ice melts, it dilutes these currents, weakening the great ocean conveyor that circulates life-giving warmth across the Earth. The Gulf Stream, the North Atlantic Drift, the Pacific Gyre, all depend on the steady pulse of the poles. And now, that pulse is faltering. In Greenland, massive glaciers that have stood for tens of thousands of years are collapsing faster than ever before. They calve into the sea with the force of detonations, their echoes rolling across fjords and ice plains. Satellite images reveal an accelerating truth. The Arctic's ice sheet is shrinking, and with it, the planet's stability. Each year, the white frontier withdraws a little more, revealing dark earth and open sea beneath. What once took centuries now happens in decades. But this isn't just a story of loss. It's a revelation of connection. The Arctic is not an isolated world. It is the keystone of global climate. When ice melts here, rains shift in the tropics. When the Arctic warms, crops fail in the south. The jet stream, that invisible river of wind circling the planet, begins to wobble, bringing snow to deserts and heat to the poles. The Arctic is not just reacting to change. It is orchestrating it. Its frozen breath reaches every corner of the Earth. And yet, there is something profoundly poetic in this fragility. For millions of years, ice has been both destroyer and protector, carving valleys, feeding rivers, shaping coastlines, and nurturing balance. It is the planet's memory, holding within its crystalline layers the story of time itself. Each centimeter of ice holds the record of a year, of storms, eruptions, droughts, and warmth. Drill deep enough, and you can read the planet's autobiography in frozen script. Scientists have done just that. In the cores extracted from the Greenland ice sheet, they found traces of volcanic ash from ancient eruptions, pollen from long-vanished forests, and even radioactive particles from human history. The ice has witnessed it all. It has recorded our beginnings, our mistakes, our progress, and now it records our warning. Standing atop these glaciers, one feels both awe and unease. Beneath your feet lies ice older than civilization, older than language, and yet it moves, slowly, surely, toward the sea. Its flow is graceful, but relentless. It carries the weight of time itself. To watch it melt is to watch history dissolve before your eyes. But the ice is not gone yet. Its heart still beats, slow and deep. The question is whether we are listening, whether we can still hear the rhythm beneath the noise of our own creation. For if that pulse stops, it will not just be the Arctic that falls silent. It will be the world. The Arctic's ice does not simply exist. It moves with intent. It speaks through its melting, its cracking, its endless migrations toward the sea. To the untrained eye, it might appear frozen and eternal, but beneath its surface, an orchestra of invisible forces is at play. Each glacier, each flow, is a living instrument in the symphony of climate, carrying with it messages that ripple through oceans, skies, and seasons. When the Arctic breathes out warmth, the world listens. The jet stream begins to waver, bending like a slow pulse across continents. Where once its path was strong and sure, now it falters, meandering into unpredictable curves that send cold waves southward and heat northward. This distortion transforms weather itself. Snow falls in places that have never known it. Drought scorches lands that once bloomed. Storms gather over waters that were once calm. The ice is the world's metronome, and its rhythm is changing. In the depths of the Arctic Ocean, massive rivers of fresh water flow from melting glaciers, merging with saltwater currents that have guided the planet's climate since before humanity's birth. These hidden exchanges shift the ocean's density and temperature, altering the great thermaline circulation, the global conveyor belt of life. This unseen machinery moves nutrients, warmth, and oxygen across every ocean, feeding plankton blooms, fish migrations, and the weather systems that cradle civilization. When the Arctic falters, the entire planet feels it. But the transformation is not only physical. It is emotional. There's a grief embedded in the sound of breaking ice, a deep, resonant echo that feels both ancient and immediate. Researchers who spend months on the frozen sea often describe the experience as haunting. At night, when the wind stills, they hear the distant groan of ice sheets shifting, the sound of continents breathing. Some call it beautiful. Others call it heartbreaking. It is both. The Arctic has always been a mirror, reflecting humanity's relationship with the planet. Once, we saw it as infinite, untouched, immortal. Now we see its fractures, and in them, our own. For the first time in human history, the cryosphere, the frozen part of Earth, is shrinking faster than it can recover. Ancient glaciers that took millennia to form vanish in a single generation. Lakes once locked in ice now ripple freely under summer suns that never set. The frozen pulse of the planet quickens, not in strength, but in desperation. Yet within this unfolding tragedy lies revelation. The Arctic is not dying silently. It is teaching. It shows us, in its clarity and collapse, how interconnected everything truly is. When the sea ice retreats, sunlight floods the dark waters below, triggering massive blooms of phytoplankton, the microscopic architects of oxygen. In their millions, they absorb carbon and feed the oceans. But as melting continues and ecosystems shift, even these microscopic miracles struggle to keep balance. The Arctic reminds us that every breath, every cloud, every drop of rain is linked to its frozen crown. And still, amid all the loss, there is a kind of grace. The melting ice releases ancient air, bubbles trapped since the dawn of civilization. When they rise and burst, they release whispers of another age, molecules of breath once drawn by our distant ancestors. The Arctic gives back fragments of its memory, even as it fades. It is both a requiem and a rebirth, an ending and a beginning, forever intertwined. Some scientists speak of tipping points, thresholds beyond which change becomes irreversible. The Arctic may be approaching one. Yet even as the alarm grows louder, the ice continues to remind us of resilience. For though it retreats, it also reforms each winter, layer by layer, stubborn against the inevitable. It clings to the edges of the world, defying warmth with quiet persistence. There is courage in that stillness, the courage of endurance. When explorers once stood at the North Pole, they planted flags to mark discovery. Now, the new explorers plant sensors, cameras, and instruments, not to claim, but to understand. The Arctic has ceased to be a frontier of conquest and become a frontier of consciousness. To study its ice is to confront our reflection, fragile, powerful, and fleeting. And so, the frozen pulse continues, steady, fading, echoing through every storm, every breeze, every human breath. We may not control it, but we are bound to it. And if the pulse stops, if the Arctic's rhythm fades into silence, then perhaps the question will no longer be what happens to the ice, but what happens to us. Night in the Arctic is unlike night anywhere else on Earth. It isn't defined by darkness, but by depth, a vast, endless void suspended between shadow and light. The horizon disappears, replaced by a silver haze that blurs the boundary between sea, ice, and sky. In this half-light, the world feels infinite and fragile at once, as though creation itself were holding its breath. Under this spectral calm, something remarkable happens. The ice moves. It drifts in silence, entire floes stretching miles across, carried by invisible winds and undercurrents. To stand upon one is to stand on a moving world, a landscape that never stays the same. The surface groans, splinters, and reforms in an endless act of transformation. Even when stillness reigns, the Arctic is never truly still. Above, the aurora begins to stir. Ribbons of green and violet ripple across the sky like silk caught in an unseen current. The ancient Inupiat called it the dance of the spirits. To scientists, it is the signature of the sun, charged particles colliding with the atmosphere, painting the heavens in whispers of light. But for those who witness it firsthand, words fall short. The aurora is not something you simply see. It's something you feel, a living pulse that hums through the bones of the earth itself. Down below, the ice responds. The surface reflects the colors of the heavens, casting ghostly glows into cracks and crevices. Beneath the frozen crust, tiny organisms bloom in fleeting moments of light. Diatoms, the glass-walled architects of the sea, multiply in hidden abundance. They are the quiet foundation of the Arctic ecosystem, feeding krill, fish, whales, and birds. Each flicker of the aurora above is mirrored by a flicker of life below, as if the sky and sea are breathing together. But this fragile synchrony is faltering. As the ice thins, sunlight penetrates deeper and earlier each year. Ecosystems shift, species migrate, some vanish. The balance that has governed this realm for millennia begins to unravel, thread by thread. The Arctic has entered a state of flux, its beauty laced with a quiet sorrow. The old rhythms of freeze and thaw, of migration and return, grow uncertain. The world beneath the aurora is rewriting itself. And yet, amid this slow disintegration, there are moments of profound resilience. The narwhals still rise through cracks in the ice, their long ivory tusks glinting under the pale lights. The polar bears still roam, their footprints mapping stories across drifting continents of snow. The Arctic fox still hunts, its fur blending seamlessly into the endless white. These creatures endure, adapting with each generation, bound to a world that is both their cradle and their crucible. To study them is to witness evolution in real time. Scientists tracking the bears have discovered astonishing changes in behavior. Longer swims between ice floes, shifts in hunting patterns, and unexpected alliances between species once separated by solid ice. The Arctic, once thought static, is proving itself a theater of innovation. Life here is rewriting its own rules, racing against a clock set by melting ice. Far above, satellites trace the ice's decline from space. Time-lapse images of retreating glaciers, shrinking flows, and rising seas. The data tells one story, but to stand upon that ice, to feel it crack beneath your feet, tells another. It is one thing to know the numbers. It is another to feel the silence that follows a calving glacier, the deep thunder that rolls across the horizon and fades into the bones of the sea. In that sound, you understand both power and loss. The Arctic is not just a place. It is a living archive of time. Every layer of ice holds stories of the planet's past, trapped there, ancient pollen, chemical fingerprints of forgotten eras. Scientists drilling into ice cores can read these frozen scriptures, tracing the planet's breath across hundreds of thousands of years. And as they melt in real time, those records vanish, the past dissolving into the present, molecule by molecule. So, when you look upon the Arctic night, the aurora dancing above a landscape of drifting ice and restless water, remember, this is the planet dreaming. The colors in the sky are not just light, they are memory. The ice beneath your feet is not just frozen water. It is time itself, compressed and waiting to be heard. But time is growing restless. The Arctic's great silence is no longer silence at all. It's a warning, carried on the coldest winds, whispering across continents. A voice from the edge of the world, asking the question we've long ignored. When the ice finally speaks, will anyone still be listening? There is a place where the Arctic meets the sea, not in a clash of violence, but in a slow, deliberate surrender. Here, the ice dissolves into mist, and the ocean, black as obsidian, mirrors the pale sky above. This boundary, fragile and shifting, is called the marginal ice zone. a realm where two worlds coexist for only a heartbeat before one consumes the other. It is in this liminal space that the Arctic's greatest transformations unfold. At first glance, it seems lifeless. A barren expanse of floating ice shards, silent waves, and vapor rising like ghosts. But hidden within this desolation is extraordinary vitality. The edges of melting ice are nurseries, fertile grounds where sunlight filters through thin layers of ice and awakens blooms of plankton. In these microscopic jungles, life begins. Tiny copepods drift through green clouds of diatoms, feeding on the pulse of light that reaches them for only a few brief months each year. And from them, an entire ecosystem is born. Fish, seals, whales, each one tracing its existence back to this invisible genesis beneath the ice. Here, the ocean breathes differently. When the wind sweeps across the frozen frontier, it stirs the water below, drawing nutrients up from the depths. These invisible upwellings nourish the Arctic's web of life, connecting the deep sea to the sky in a single elegant exchange. But as the ice retreats further each summer, these patterns falter. The currents weaken, the timing shifts, and the delicate choreography of life begins to lose its rhythm. And yet, even in decay, there is beauty. Imagine a blue whale surfacing at the edge of the ice, its colossal body glistening in the low sun. A creature so vast, so ancient, it seems to carry the memory of the ocean itself. Its breath rises into the frigid air like a plume of steam, the exhalation of an ocean spirit. Around it, smaller lives spiral. Arctic terns diving in flashes of silver, seals weaving through the icy labyrinths. It is a moment that transcends survival. It is the living proof of harmony forged in extremity. But the harmony is breaking. The sea ice that once defined the Arctic boundary has thinned by over 50% in just a few decades. What was once a fortress of cold is becoming an open sea. The marginal ice zone now extends farther north each year, pulling the ecosystems with it, and with them, the predators and prey that depend on its rhythm. Polar bears swim longer distances to find stable ice. Walruses crowd beaches by the thousands, their massive bodies resting where they once hauled out onto floes. Even the whales, once guided by the soundscape of shifting ice, now navigate an ocean that hums with human presence. Ships, drills, and engines echoing through waters that were once silent. And silence in the Arctic is sacred. It is not absence, it is presence. The silence carries meaning. The crack of ice signaling pressure beneath the surface. The faint pop of melting air bubbles released from ancient cores. The distant rumble of a glacier calving into the sea. But human sound has begun to drown these ancient voices. The Arctic Ocean, once a cathedral of stillness, now vibrates with a low hum, the noise of industry creeping northward. What was once untouched has become a crossroads of ambition. Still, there are moments of resistance. The Inuit and other northern peoples who have lived here for millennia still walk these shores, still read the signs of the ice as their ancestors did. They see what the satellites cannot, the subtle changes in the wind's scent, the color of the snow, the rhythm of the tides. For them, the Arctic is not a wilderness. It is home, alive and sentient. The ice speaks, they say, but only if you know how to listen. Their stories of creation, of endurance, of reverence, hold wisdom that the modern world too often forgets. In one such legend, the sea goddess Sedna lives beneath the waves, her hair tangled with the creatures of the deep. When humans take more than they need, she withholds her bounty, sealing away the fish and seals until balance is restored. It is not a myth, it is a warning. The Arctic does not punish. It responds, and every act of imbalance echoes back through its frozen halls. So, as explorers and scientists return with data and samples, the people who have always called this place home remind them of something deeper. The Arctic does not belong to anyone. It belongs to itself, a realm of perpetual becoming, where survival is not conquest, but understanding. And as the last light fades across the marginal ice zone, the ocean exhales again, a single, shimmering breath that blurs the line between endings and beginnings. When dawn returns to the Arctic, it does not rise, it glows. The light spills softly across the horizon, a pale gold that feels almost reluctant, hesitant to disturb the silence. The ice, bathed in this fragile warmth, transforms. Shadows stretch across its ridges like brushstrokes of memory, and the sea mirrors the sky in hues of silver and cobalt. This moment, fleeting, delicate, marks the transition between survival and awakening. It is the hour when the Arctic seems to remember itself. Yet beneath that stillness, the world stirs. Cracks bloom across the ice like veins of light, spreading with deep, resonant echoes that can be felt miles away. To those who listen closely, each crack tells a story of pressure building, of water swelling, of warmth creeping in unseen. The sound is both terrifying and tender, a reminder that the Arctic is not a dead land, but a living body, breathing, expanding, changing. Far below the surface, in the cold, black water, lies a kingdom unseen. Here, under the floating ceiling of ice, strange forms drift in the dark. Jellyfish that glow with internal fire, shrimp-like amphipods clinging to ice crystals, and ghostly fish that shimmer with bioluminescent light. This underworld, once hidden from human eyes, thrives in the narrow band between freeze and melt. Every flake of ice above them, every shift of current, dictates the rhythm of their existence. When the ice retreats, so too does their shelter, and the balance that sustained them for millennia begins to unravel. But where life disappears, it also adapts. Scientists have discovered new species emerging in places once thought barren. Microorganisms, feeding on methane bubbles trapped under thawing permafrost. Bacteria evolving to survive in brine channels where salt and cold should have made life impossible. The Arctic is rewriting evolution itself, not in centuries, but in years. It is both a laboratory and a warning, proof that life will find a way, even as it transforms beyond recognition. From above, the world watches. Satellites capture the slow unspooling of white across the blue, vast mosaics of retreating ice. But even these silent observers can't capture the feeling of standing there. The sudden hush after a glacier breaks, the eerie beauty of mist drifting through frozen fjords, the soft rhythm of meltwater trickling into the sea. In those sounds and silences, you understand. The Arctic is not merely changing, it is speaking. The scientists who live among this transformation describe it as an awakening. They study the ice course, the atmosphere, the chemistry of the sea, yet what they often feel most profoundly is emotion. One researcher, after months alone at an outpost on the Greenland ice sheet, wrote in her journal, "It feels like standing on the edge of time itself, watching the past melt into the present." Another described hearing the sound of the ice shift under her tent one night, a deep rumbling crack that rolled like thunder beneath her. "It felt alive," she said, "as if the earth itself was turning in its sleep." But while they measure, record, and map, others see opportunity. Shipping routes long sealed by ice are opening for the first time in history. Nations stake claims on newly exposed seabeds rich in oil, gas, and rare minerals. The Arctic, once a place of isolation, has become the final frontier of competition, a race for resources hidden beneath melting glaciers. Ships cut through once frozen waters, leaving trails of diesel soot that darken the ice, accelerating its melt. What was once a sanctuary of silence is becoming an arena of ambition. The irony is stark. The very forces that unravel the Arctic also make it more accessible. The melting opens doors, and humanity, ever restless, steps through them without hesitation. But each step deeper north comes with a cost, one that cannot be measured in currency, only in consequence. The Arctic is not just losing ice, it is losing time. Every melt, every storm, every vanished flow carries away fragments of what once was, leaving behind a mirror that reflects both our progress and our peril. And still, amid the chaos, the light returns. Even in its decline, the Arctic remains sublime. The dawn stretches wider now, spilling across open water that gleams like liquid glass. The air, sharp with salt and cold, tastes of beginnings, even as endings loom on the horizon. For all its fragility, the Arctic endures. It shifts, adapts, resists. It whispers a truth humanity cannot ignore. Destruction and beauty are not opposites here. They are intertwined, inseparable, eternal. As the sun climbs higher, the sea exhales mist into the light. The boundary between ice and air dissolves once more, and in that fleeting moment, you can almost believe the Arctic forgives us, if not for what we've done, then for the simple act of witnessing it. The Arctic sun hangs low, circling the horizon like a watchful eye that never blinks. It neither rises nor sets. It lingers, eternal and patient, painting the world in hues of gold and violet. Time here stretches thin, like the ice itself, bending under the weight of both memory and change. To live beneath this sun is to feel suspended between two worlds, one of ancient frost and one of inevitable fire. Across the drifting floes, the air trembles with a quiet tension. The sea ice, fragile yet unyielding, creaks like old wood beneath invisible hands. Every sound carries, the soft sigh of wind, the distant groan of a glacier, the haunting calls of ivory gulls circling above. It feels as if the Arctic itself is whispering, trying to remind us that every fracture, every echo, is part of a much older conversation between Earth and time. From the decks of research vessels, scientists lean over the rails, watching the endless white give way to open water. The changes are no longer subtle, they are visceral. Whole ice shelves, once stable as continents, now drift freely. Fjords that were locked in silence now roar with torrents of meltwater. Even the color of the sea has changed. What was once deep cobalt now glows turquoise, reflecting sunlight that no longer bounces from ice but sinks into the warming ocean. The transformation is breathtaking and terrifying. One oceanographer describes it best. It feels like watching the world breathe differently, because that is exactly what's happening. The Arctic's ice, once a shield that cooled the planet, now becomes its mirror-absorbing heat, accelerating its own demise. The balance tips, not in a distant future, but now, with every summer that lasts longer than the one before. Yet even in the face of collapse, there is resilience. Beneath the thinning ice, a pulse of life endures. The Arctic cods still dart through the cold, clear, water-silver sparks of persistence. The seals still dive deep, their movements choreographed to rhythms older than civilization. And far below them, tiny plankton still drift in invisible clouds, capturing sunlight and turning it into life. These are the quiet heroes of the Arctic, unseen but essential. Their existence is fragile, yet in that fragility lies something sacred, a testament to life's refusal to yield. But the balance that sustains them teeters on the edge. When the ice melts too soon, the timing of the bloom shifts, breaking the chain of survival. The cod hatch before the plankton bloom. The seals arrive before the fish. The bears wait for prey that never comes. It's a slow unraveling, one thread at a time, until an entire web begins to fray. The Arctic doesn't collapse in an instant. It fades in rhythms almost imperceptible, like the slow dimming of a heartbeat. And through it all, humanity watches, some with reverence, others with calculation. Cargo ships chart new routes across the north, shaving weeks off their journeys by cutting through ice-free seas. Oil platforms rise like steel giants from the melting permafrost. For the first time, what was once impassable becomes profitable. But progress here feels hollow, echoing against the ghosts of glaciers. Every drop of fuel extracted from this fragile land burns a little more of its soul away. The indigenous peoples of the Arctic see this differently. To them, the melting is not just a scientific phenomenon, it is a spiritual shift. The elders speak of the great unfreezing, when the boundaries between worlds, ice and water, human and nature grow thin. It is both prophecy and warning. The old ways taught respect for cycles, for restraint, for harmony. Modern ambition has forgotten those lessons, and the Arctic bears the scars of that forgetting. Yet still, hope lingers like light on the horizon. In recent years, scientists and local communities have begun working together, not as conquerors and subjects, but as partners. They deploy autonomous drones to monitor ice melt, plant sensors along permafrost cliffs, and share ancient navigation wisdom passed down through generations. Together, they map a world in flux, not to exploit it, but to understand it. Because understanding is the only bridge left between preservation and loss. The Arctic doesn't ask for salvation. It asks for listening. It asks for humility. It asks for remembrance that humanity once learned to survive not by conquering nature, but by living within it. Perhaps, in that frozen mirror, the world can see its reflection clearly enough to change course. As the sun dips lower, though it never truly sets, the horizon glows with an otherworldly light, a pale fire that blurs the line between sky and sea. The ice gleams like glass, fragile and eternal, and for a fleeting moment, it feels as though the Arctic forgives us. The air is still. The sea is calm. The earth breathes, waiting. And in that breath lies a question one that drifts on the wind and lingers in the fading light. If this place, this fragile crown of the planet, can endure such change and still remain beautiful, what excuse do we have not to do the same? There comes a moment, deep within the Arctic silence, when the world feels like it is holding its breath. The air sharpens, the horizon vanishes, and everything sky, ice, and sea merges into one endless expanse of white fire and blue shadow. It is not emptiness. It is infinity made visible. Here, on the edge of the world, humanity stands face to face with the consequences of its own creation. This final chapter of the Arctic story is not written in ink or stone. It is written in meltwater. Rivers flow where none existed before, carving veins through ancient ice. Glaciers retreat into the sea, collapsing in thunderous fragments that echo like 1,000 drums. The earth itself trembles as ice that once weighed continents now vanishes into the deep. The Arctic is bleeding light, and the oceans are swallowing its memory. From space, the transformation is unmistakable. Satellite imagery reveals a world unraveling in motion, each summer's sea ice shrinking further than the last. Each winter struggling to reclaim what was lost. Where white once dominated the top of the globe, dark water now absorbs the sun's heat, accelerating the thaw. Scientists call it a feedback loop, but it feels more like a spiral of descent into an era where balance no longer belongs to us. And yet, the Arctic is not just a casualty. It is also a teacher. Its collapse reveals the fragility of systems we took for granted, the air we breathe, the weather we depend on, the currents that cradle life across every ocean. The melting here does not stay here. It travels. It shifts jet streams, alters rainfall, fuels storms. The Arctic is the world's silent engine, and its rhythm drives every climate, every harvest, every human breath. To lose it is not to lose a place, it is to lose direction. But even in its unraveling, the Arctic resists despair. Amid the chaos, there are moments of transcendent scenes so breathtaking they silence every thought. Imagine standing at the edge of a glacier as it calves into the sea, the air filled with mist and thunder, the sun refracted through shards of falling ice like stained glass in motion. Or watching a pod of beluga whales glide through turquoise meltwater, their white bodies luminous against the dark sea. These are not just moments of beauty. They are reminders of what still endures. And what endures, perhaps, is memory. The Arctic remembers everything. It holds the story of our planet in frozen layers, a timeline of atmosphere, volcano, fire, and frost. Each trapped bubble of air beneath the ice contains a whisper from a world long vanished. But as the ice melts, those whispers escape, dissolving into the air we breathe. We inhale history without knowing it. The breath of mammoths, the smoke of ancient forests, the faint trace of a world untouched by human hands. Scientists call these revelations data. Poets might call them ghosts. Both are right. Yet there is another kind of memory here, one that belongs not to ice, but to people. The Arctic's indigenous communities carry stories older than nations, wisdom carved not into books, but into the land itself. They speak of seasons that breathe like living beings, of winds that carry messages, of animals that are teachers rather than prey. In their worldview, the Arctic is not dying, it is changing, as it always has. But the pace of change now threatens to outrun memory itself. And that is what makes this moment sacred. Because even now, as the world rushes forward, the Arctic asks us to slow down to see, to witness, to remember that awe is not weakness, and wonder is not naivety. These are the tools that once made humanity humble before the natural world. Somewhere along the way, we traded them for dominance, and the price has become visible in every melting glacier. Yet the Arctic remains beautiful, not despite its transformation, but because of it. Beauty, after all, is not permanence. It is the courage of something that persists in the face of decay. The icebergs still float like cathedrals, their spires gleaming under the midnight sun. The polar bears still stand sentinel at the edge of the floes, their reflection trembling on water that once was solid. And above them, the aurora still dances, its green flames flickering across the heavens, as though the sky itself refuses to forget the language of wonder. This is not just the end of ice. It is the beginning of understanding. The Arctic's voice grows louder with each melt, each crack, each sigh of the sea. And if we truly listen, we might still hear the message beneath the collapse, that to destroy something so ancient is to unmake a part of ourselves. The question then is no longer whether the Arctic will change. It already has. The question is whether we will change with it. The Arctic sky is a living canvas, a moving gallery of color and silence, where each hue feels like an emotion the Earth itself is trying to express. As the long day drifts into the ghost of night, the sun dips just below the horizon, and a soft indigo haze stretches endlessly across the ice. The air holds its breath. Then, slowly, the aurora returns, shimmering, alive, as if the heavens are remembering something ancient. It begins as a faint glow, a wisp of green brushing the edges of the atmosphere. Then, as if summoned by the pulse of the planet, it blooms. Curtains of light twist and ripple across the sky, spiraling in ethereal choreography. Scientists will tell you it's caused by solar winds, charged particles colliding, with oxygen and nitrogen high above the Earth. But no science can capture what it feels like. The aurora is not merely seen, it is felt in the bones, heard in the heart, believed in the soul. For those who stand beneath it, the moment feels eternal. The ice reflects the lights like a vast mirror. The sea glimmers with green fire, and everything, every breath, every heartbeat feels connected. In that fleeting communion between earth and sky, one truth becomes clear. The Arctic is not empty. It is alive. Yet, even this beauty carries the weight of loss. The aurora dances above a world unraveling. The glaciers that once towered like frozen fortresses crumble quietly beneath it. The permafrost, the deep frozen memory of the land, begins to thaw, exhaling ancient gases into the air. Methane bubbles rise from the tundra like invisible prayers, unseen but potent, feeding the very cycle that consumes the world. The Arctic's brilliance hides its pain well. Scientists walk these trembling lands, their boots sinking into ground that once was solid for centuries. Beneath their feet, The Earth exhales ghosts, remnants of ice ages and civilizations long past. The air smells faintly metallic, tinged with the scent of ancient soil coming back to life. In the silence, you can almost hear it, the sound of time dissolving. And yet, amid the desolation, there are glimmers of revelation. As the permafrost thaws, it reveals secrets thought lost forever, preserved plants, ancient pollen, even the remains of creatures that walked the earth before language was born. A woolly mammoth skin, intact beneath the frost. A seed that, after 30,000 years entombed in ice, sprouts again when warmed by human hands. The Arctic gives us both warning and wisdom, destruction and rebirth intertwined. But it also reveals something about ourselves. The deeper we dig, the more we uncover not just the story of a frozen world, but of human nature itself, our brilliance, our blindness, our unrelenting hunger to see beyond the horizon. We are both explorers and inheritors, architects and witnesses. The Arctic reflects us, vast, powerful, fragile, and changing. Still, there are moments of humility, of pure stillness, when all ambition dissolves. Picture a lone figure standing at the edge of the sea ice, staring into an ocean lit by the aurora's glow. Around them, nothing moves but the light. No engines. No noise. Only the rhythm of wind and water, the whisper of snow against skin. In that solitude, something stirs, a sense of belonging, not dominance. The understanding that we are not the masters of this planet, but one small part of its vast living symphony. For centuries, the Arctic has been a place of myths, a frontier of gods and monsters, of endless white where men vanish chasing the edge of the world. Today, its myths are reborn, not in legend, but in consequence. The monsters now are invisible. Carbon, heat, greed, and time. The gods, if they exist, reside in the resilience of ice, the courage of the creatures who remain, and the patience of a planet that still gives us beauty in return for harm. And perhaps that is the Arctic's final gift, that even as it melts, it refuses to surrender its majesty. Even in decay, it creates wonder. Even in silence, it teaches. It shows us that fragility can be strength, that endings can hold beginnings, and that the world, even in its most wounded form, is still capable of astonishing grace. As the aurora fades and the first light of dawn returns, the ice gleams with a soft golden shimmer. It feels like a farewell, but also a promise. For just as the Arctic changes, so can we. The question is whether we will listen to the lessons written in its light before the last whisper of frost fades forever into the sea. Because the truth is simple, and it echoes in every gust of wind, every ripple of melting water. The Arctic is not gone, not yet. It is waiting, watching, asking us with one final breath of frozen air, what will you do now? The Arctic at dawn feels like the breath between worlds. A thin silver mist rises from the melting sea, wrapping the ice in ghostly ribbons. The horizon glows faintly pink, a fragile line separating shadow from light. It is a scene both sacred and sorrowful, a painting that seems to exist outside of time. Here, the planet's pulse beats slow and deep. Every sound, the creak of shifting ice, the soft call of a distant gull, feels like a whisper from the earth itself. But beneath this serenity lies movement, change, the kind that cannot be undone. Satellites orbiting far above record the slow disintegration of glaciers once believed eternal. Vast rivers of ice now flow faster than they ever have, surging toward the sea in white avalanches. From space, it looks beautiful, hypnotic, almost artistic. But on the ground, it sounds like thunder. The collapse of ancient ice sheets roars like a god awakening from a long sleep. In this shifting landscape, nature is rewriting its own boundaries. New islands rise from retreating glaciers. Rivers once buried beneath kilometers of ice begin to carve their way into the open. And where the sea ice disappears, sunlight touches the ocean for the first time in millennia, awakening plankton blooms that glitter like galaxies beneath the waves. Life adapts, stubborn, fierce, and magnificent. Even here, where the cold once reigned supreme, warmth becomes an architect of change. Yet, this new life carries a paradox. The same forces that give rise to it also bring destruction. As warmer waters infiltrate the Arctic seas, ecosystems unravel in silence. Walruses crowd rocky shores that were never meant to hold them, their cries echoing against cliffs in haunting chorus. Polar bears, the monarchs of this frozen empire, drift farther each year on thinning ice, searching for seals that no longer wait. Some starve. Others drown. Their survival, once certain, is now a question written in meltwater. Still, amid this collapse, the Arctic does what it has always done. It endures. Its resilience is quiet but undeniable. The tundra greens earlier each spring. Moss creeps across bare stone. The wind carries seeds to places it never reached before. Even in the face of loss, the Arctic remains a force of creation, a reminder that endings in nature are rarely final. They are transformations. And for the people who live here, the Inuit, the Sami, and countless others whose ancestors have walked this ice for generations, that transformation is both personal and profound. To them, the Arctic is not a frontier. It is home, a living spirit woven into their stories, their language, their blood. They read the land like a book, the tilt of snow, the rhythm of wind, the direction of migrating herds. They have watched the changes more closely than any satellite could. And they know the truth. The Arctic is speaking. We just have to listen. They tell stories of the aurora as the souls of their ancestors dancing across the sky, of the northern winds as voices of warning and wisdom. Now, as the ice melts, those stories feel less like mythology and more like prophecy. The spirits are restless. The earth is remembering. And humanity stands at the threshold of a choice: to continue its silent march toward oblivion, or to learn from the world that has always sustained it. In the glow of the rising sun, an explorer stands beside an Inuit elder on the frozen shore. Between them lies a vast expanse of water, once a highway of ice, now a mirror of the changing world. The elder lifts a handful of snow, lets it fall slowly from his fingers, and says quietly, "This is not the end." It is the earth turning the page. The explorer looks out across the horizon, where icebergs drift like fragments of shattered time. Above them, a faint wisp of green lingers, the last echo of the aurora. For a moment, it feels like the Arctic is breathing, alive and aware, holding its final secret in silence. And then there's only the wind. Perhaps that is the lesson the Arctic has been whispering all along, that every frozen heart can thaw, every silence can become a song, and every loss can hold the seed of renewal. We came here searching for discovery, but what we found was reflection, a mirror made of ice, showing us not what we have conquered, but what we must protect. The Arctic is not a distant world at the top of the map. It is the pulse that keeps the planet alive. Its fate is ours. Its silence is our warning. And if we choose to listen, truly listen, perhaps there is still time to rewrite the story. As the final light fades, the wind sweeps across the tundra, carrying with it the sound of moving ice and melting snow, a lullaby for a world on the edge of rebirth. And in that sound, if you listen closely enough, you can still hear it, the heartbeat of the earth. There is a stillness at the top of the world, the kind that feels older than time itself. In the Arctic dawn, everything glows in soft light. The snow, the sky, the air itself. It is neither day nor night, neither beginning nor end. It is the breath between. And in that fragile breath, the earth remembers. The glaciers that once ruled the horizon now lie fractured, drifting in the ocean like the broken bones of giants. Each shard holds a story, a memory frozen in blue, pressed into silence for thousands of years. If you could listen closely enough, perhaps you could hear them speak of ancient storms, of life that bloomed and vanished, of ages when the world was colder, purer, slower. The ice has always been a mirror, one that shows us both the past and our reflection within it. But as it melts, so too does our certainty. The lines between history and prophecy blur, and the future becomes a reflection shimmering on the water's surface, beautiful, trembling, uncertain. Scientists kneel beside melt pools, collecting samples that shimmer like liquid glass. Within those droplets are secrets of atmospheres long gone, traces of air breathed by mammoths, forests, and forgotten civilizations. To study the Arctic is to hold the memory of the Earth in your hands, delicate, irreplaceable, slipping through your fingers as it warms. But beyond the data, beyond the measurements and maps, there is something more profound, something you can only feel. A sense of reverence, of mourning, of awe. The Arctic humbles us because it is everything we are not. Patient, enduring, selfless. It asks for nothing but balance, and in return, it gives the world its rhythm. Yet balance is what we have taken. The rhythm now falters, replaced by the pulse of industry and the quiet hum of heat. The Arctic, once untouchable, has become the world's most fragile truth, proof that no distance is far enough to escape ourselves. The wind that moves across its ice carries the same air that fills our lungs. The meltwater that trickles through its veins will one day flow through our cities. The Arctic story is not isolated. It is our story. Still, there are places where hope lingers, small, defiant, radiant. Rewilding projects breathe new life into thawing tundra. Communities rebuild in harmony with the changing land. Scientists and storytellers work side by side, not just to document loss, but to preserve memory. And slowly, humanity begins to understand that the Arctic is not vanishing. It is transforming, and in that transformation lies a lesson we were always meant to learn. Because the Arctic has never been about conquest. It has never belonged to us. It was never a frontier to be claimed, but a teacher to be heard. For centuries, explorers came here seeking glory, to plant flags, to find passages, to etch their names in frozen stone. But what if the true act of discovery is not found in taking, but in listening? Imagine standing alone beneath the northern lights. The sky a river of green and violet, the air so cold it burns to breathe. The ice beneath your boots groans softly, as though alive. And in that moment, the world feels infinite, but also heartbreakingly fragile. You understand, suddenly, how small we are, and how vast our responsibility must be. The Arctic will continue its slow dance through time. Long after we are gone, its winds will still whisper, its stars will still shimmer, and its silence will still echo through the bones of the earth. The question is not whether the Arctic will survive. It will, in one form or another. The question is whether we will be worthy of surviving with it. In the end, perhaps the Arctic is not dying. Perhaps it is only evolving, shedding its skin of ice to remind us that even the coldest hearts can change. Its transformation is both warning and promise. A reminder that beauty is fleeting, but not lost. That if we act with humility, there is still time to heal what we've broken. The camera pans out, from the solitary figure on the frozen shore to the endless expanse of sea and sky. The aurora flickers faintly above, a spectral memory of color. The ocean glows like molten glass, carrying fragments of ancient glaciers out into the unknown. And then, as the world fades into soft light, a single truth remains. The Arctic is not silence. It is a voice, one that has spoken for 1,000,000 years, one that still speaks now. A voice that whispers through every storm, every melt, every wave. It tells us that everything is connected, that every act of harm ripples through eternity, but so does every act of care. And if we listen closely, perhaps we can still hear it, that quiet, steady rhythm beneath the chaos, the heartbeat of ice, the memory of the world, the sound of a planet that still believes in us. Beneath the silence of the Arctic lies a secret world, a dark ocean that has never seen the light of day. Beneath the glaciers, under kilometers of frozen weight, there are lakes sealed away for millions of years. They are oceans without sky, kingdoms of water and pressure and ancient time. No human eye has ever truly seen them, and yet they hold the story of life's persistence written in liquid darkness. The journey to find them begins not with ships, but with sound. Scientists lower sensors through narrow shafts drilled into the ice, listening to echoes that return from the deep. The data reveals vast hidden realms, tunnels where meltwater runs like veins beneath the continent, connecting chambers larger than cities. They call them subglacial networks, but the truth feels more like myth. Rivers flowing through ice, feeding secret oceans that breathe in silence. In the year's coldest months, these waters move almost imperceptibly, like slow blood. In summer, they surge, shifting the ice above, reshaping the land below. The glaciers are alive, not solid, but fluid, their underbellies a labyrinth of motion and mystery. If the surface is the Arctic's face, this is its soul. What exists in this unseen world? For decades, we believed it barren, too dark, too cold, too remote for life. But when explorers finally pierced the ice and reached these lakes, they found something extraordinary. Microbes, living, breathing, evolving in a world without sunlight. Ancient forms of life, untouched by time, thriving in liquid shadows. Some of these organisms are older than our species itself. Their DNA carries memories from epochs when the continents were still drifting apart. In their simplicity lies brilliance, a lesson in endurance, in patience, in adaptation. They feed not on sunlight but on minerals, extracting energy from stone and metal in a dance of chemistry older than the sun's rise over land. When the first samples were lifted to the surface, they shimmered faintly in the light, tiny motes of motion within droplets of water that hadn't touched air in a million years. It felt like resurrection. As one scientist whispered, holding a vial between trembling fingers, "It's as if the earth just spoke back." This discovery changed everything. It reshaped our understanding of life itself, not as something fragile, but as something unyielding. If creatures can thrive here, sealed beneath endless ice, then life can exist almost anywhere. The Arctic, once seen as lifeless, became a key to understanding existence beyond Earth. These frozen lakes became models for oceans beneath Europa's crust, or the buried seas of Enceladus. The Arctic became both mirror and map, a reflection of Earth and a guide to the cosmos. But beauty and danger often share the same breath. These hidden waters, untouched for eons, are beginning to awaken not through exploration, but through collapse. As the ice above thins, new light and air seep into the sealed caverns. Ancient microbes, once dormant, stir, reawakening in a world that has long moved on. Some are harmless, others unknown. The Arctic's secrets are magnificent but also unsettling. When we open what the Earth has sealed, we inherit both its wonder and its warning. Still, we continue, because the pull of the unknown is stronger than fear. Every time a submersible dips beneath the frozen crust, cameras reveal scenes that defy belief. Bioluminescent filaments twisting in slow motion, forming clouds of light like drifting galaxies. Stalactites of ice descending into black water. Organisms glowing blue, pink, and silver as if the night sky had descended into the sea. The Arctic underworld is not a graveyard. It is a cathedral of life, radiant in the dark. Down here, sound moves differently. Every droplet, every vibration becomes an echo of movement above. The hum of a glacier, the groan of distant icebergs, the faint song of the ocean currents. They all merge into a haunting symphony. It's not silence. It's music too vast for human ears to comprehend. And in that music, there's a story, one of creation, destruction, and rebirth. Because beneath the ice, life is rewriting itself, just as the world above is changing beyond recognition. Deeper still, beyond the last rays of filtered light, lies a realm that defies all comprehension. A living ocean beneath the dead weight of ice. Down here, the world is reversed. The ceiling glows faintly blue as light refracts through the ice above, while the floor, carved by time and pressure, ripples like a frozen desert. It is a world of motion hidden beneath stillness, a paradox shaped by temperature, density, and eternity. As the submersible descends, the instruments begin to hum. The readings dance erratically, pressure, salinity, temperature, all in flux. Then, the cameras adjust, and what first appeared as darkness reveals texture, color, and life. Filaments of pale light drift across the camera's view, glowing like threads of starlight suspended in black water. The explorers call them cryoluminescent colonies, living organisms that create their own light in the abyss. They are delicate, tendril beings that pulse in rhythm with unseen currents, like a constellation breathing underwater. When disturbed, they scatter in shimmering clouds that swirl and regroup, a biological ballet performed in silence. Some cling to the undersides of ice sheets, feeding on mineral-rich flows that seep from the melting glaciers above. Others drift freely, glowing and dimming as though conversing in flashes. The deeper the submersible travels, the stranger the world becomes. Vast pillars of ice, sculpted by centuries of melt and freeze, rise from the seafloor like cathedral spires. Each one hums faintly, the vibration of trapped air and moving water resonating through layers of ice. It feels as though the ocean itself is singing, a voice that has been echoing since before humanity's birth. The explorers find something unexpected, a cavernous expanse they name the Blue Chamber. It stretches for kilometers beneath the glacier, a hollow world illuminated entirely by the faint glow of bioluminescent life. Here, the ceiling drips slowly with icy stalactites, forming long frozen daggers that descend toward the water. Below them, colonies of microbial mats spread like alien carpets, shimmering faintly pink and gold. The camera pans, revealing something more. The skeletal remains of long-forgotten sea creatures, preserved perfectly in the cold. Their bones gleam pale white, entombed in crystal ice, untouched by decay. The chamber feels like a museum curated by nature itself. Every layer of frost a time stamp, every droplet a record of what once was. A robotic arm gently collects a sample, and the readings stun the team. Within the microscopic world of that water, life thrives in ways that defy biology. Cells that function without sunlight, membranes resistant to crushing pressure, metabolisms that slow to near stasis. These organisms are not just surviving. They are flourishing in conditions thought impossible. It forces a question, one that humankind has been circling for centuries. What truly defines life? Is it warmth? Light? Oxygen? Or is it something deeper? An unyielding instinct to endure, to exist, to evolve, even in absolute darkness. The Arctic's hidden waters suggest that life is not fragile, but infinite in its forms. It exists not because the world permits it, but because existence itself demands it. Every droplet of this under-ice ocean carries the memory of creation, an echo of the first breath of the earth. As the submersible rises, passing through translucent tunnels, the explorers witness a breathtaking sight. Streams of bubbles ascending from the seafloor, shimmering like liquid stars. These are ancient gases, trapped for millennia, now escaping into the world above. Each bubble bursts at the surface, releasing whispers from another time. Methane, carbon, fragments of the Earth's forgotten atmosphere. The Arctic, it seems, is exhaling its past. But the connection between this hidden ocean and the surface is fragile. A single change above, a rise in temperature, a fracture in the glacier, can alter everything below. The balance that sustained these underworlds for eons trembles now on the edge of collapse. If the ice retreats too far, the delicate ecosystems beneath will flood with light and air, their chemistry undone, their secrets lost forever. And yet, even in the face of extinction, they glow. Tiny, defiant, beautiful. Lights burning in a realm where light should not exist. Perhaps that is the essence of the Arctic. Not its cold, not its silence, but its persistence. It endures, it transforms, it astonishes, always becoming something new, even as it disappears. When the submersible finally ascends through the borehole, carrying its samples and its footage, the scientists on the surface watch in awe. For what returns from the depths is not just data, it is proof of something sacred. That even in the coldest, darkest places on Earth, life still finds a way to shine. At the edge of the blue chamber, where the last flickers of bioluminescence fade into nothingness, the explorers find movement, a current that shouldn't exist. The instruments detect the slow pulse of water, colder than the ocean above, yet somehow alive with motion, flowing through a jagged fissure beneath the glacier. It moves with the rhythm of a heartbeat, steady, deliberate, ancient. They call it the breath of the ice. Following it means venturing into the unknown, into a space narrower than the submersible's frame. The descent slows. The walls tighten. The lights dim. Every vibration, every echo of machinery feels intrusive here, like trespassing in a cathedral. The explorers proceed anyway, drawn forward by something deeper than curiosity. Reverence, maybe, or the need to understand what the Earth hides from its own surface. The fissure widens suddenly into an under-ice canyon, a colossal passage carved by the slow, eternal flow of meltwater. The ceiling shimmers with streaks of blue light refracted through kilometers of ice above. It feels like descending through a vein of the planet itself, as though they are traveling through the very circulatory system of the Earth. Then, the cameras capture it, the current itself, twisting and winding through the canyon like a silver serpent. Its edges glow faintly with suspended minerals, illuminated by the lights of the submersible. The movement is mesmerizing, slow, silent, unstoppable. It flows toward the ocean, connecting the sealed world beneath the ice with the open sea beyond. This is no static prison of frozen water. It is a dynamic, breathing system, an underground ocean that regulates the heartbeat of the Arctic. It carries nutrients, gases, and even fragments of life from one hidden realm to another. It shapes the movement of glaciers, influences ocean salinity, and plays a role in the global current systems that drive our planet's climate. To understand this current is to glimpse the inner mechanism of the world itself. But as they trace it, something else emerges, a realization, subtle yet profound. The water flowing beneath the ice is warming, slightly, gradually, enough to alter the chemistry of this ancient pathway, enough to hint that what was once sealed off is beginning to merge with the sea. The Arctic, for so long isolated, is opening. The boundaries between above and below, life and death, are dissolving. And through that breach, something new begins to stir. Sensors detect sudden turbulence. The current accelerates, pushing the submersible slightly off course. The crew stabilizes it, but the view ahead changes. What was once a narrow fissure expands into an immense under-ice chamber. A vortex swirls at its center, a spiraling column of water rising upward toward the ceiling of ice. Around it, shimmering particles drift like glowing snow. It is mesmerizing, terrifying, beautiful. The Arctic is breathing again. For centuries, these under-ice rivers have moved unseen, reshaping the glaciers from below. But now, with the warming world above, they are accelerating, linking seas, releasing ancient waters into the modern ocean. The explorers realize what they're witnessing, not just a current, but a convergence. A place where the old Arctic and the new collide. The cameras turn upward, capturing the vortex disappearing into the frozen ceiling. And there, faintly visible, a beam of light pierces down from the world above. It filters through the ice like a blade of fire through glass. For the first time, sunlight touches a place it has not seen for 1,000,000 years. The explorers are silent. There are no words for this, only the soft hum of machinery, the gentle roar of moving water, and the pulse of the planet beneath them. The Arctic is not dead. It is changing form, breathing differently, but still alive. When they ascend, breaking through the borehole back to the surface, the world feels transformed. The same wind blows, the same ice stretches to the horizon, but something invisible has shifted. The connection between the underworld and the sea is now real, a reminder that everything beneath the surface eventually touches the sky. The footage they bring back will astonish the world. Shimmering rivers beneath ice, glowing creatures in the dark, a vortex where two worlds meet. But what the cameras can't capture is the feeling, that deep, wordless recognition that the Arctic is not a place of endings, but of transformation. Beneath its silence lies a rhythm older than life, and as long as that rhythm continues, the Arctic will never truly die. It will change, adapt, evolve, like the water beneath its frozen skin, flowing toward light it has never known before. The submersible drifts upward through the melting shaft, and the screen fades to black. A single ripple of sound remains, soft, resonant, eternal. The heartbeat of water echoing through ice. Above the frozen expanse, dawn unfolds like a silent explosion of light. The Arctic sun, low and distant, bleeds across the horizon in slow motion, gold melting into silver, fire dissolving into frost. The air itself seems suspended, frozen between time and movement. It is morning in a place that has forgotten the meaning of morning, where the boundary between day and night no longer exists, only light and its absence. The world watches this silence from afar, through satellite feeds, research outposts, and distant icebreakers drifting across the polar sea. But up close, the Arctic is no longer the untouched wilderness humanity once imagined. It is becoming a frontier again. Beneath the beauty lies a quiet war, one not fought with weapons, but with ambition, maps, and the hunger for what lies below. The ice is thinning, and with it comes revelation. Beneath these ancient sheets rest mountains of oil, seams of rare minerals, and routes once thought impossible, waterways that could link the Atlantic to the Pacific, reshaping global trade. The Arctic, long seen as a frozen wasteland, has become the world's final prize. Nations mark invisible lines across ice that drifts freely with the wind. Flags are planted on the ocean floor, treaties signed and contested, while icebreakers carve paths through the heart of the North. The race for the Arctic has begun, a quiet, relentless pursuit masked by words like exploration and scientific cooperation. But beneath the rhetoric lies something primal: survival, power, and fear of being left behind. At the center of this race stands a paradox. To reach the resources locked beneath the Arctic, humanity must accelerate the very forces that destroy it. The more we extract, the more we melt. The more we gain, the more we lose. Every pipeline, every drilling platform, every icebreaker carries both progress and extinction in its wake. And yet, hope flickers here too, fragile but persistent. Scientists who walk the ice speak not only of data, but of reverence. They call the Arctic a mirror, one that reflects the soul of the planet back at us. In its thawing rivers and collapsing shelves, we see our own reflection, impatient, ambitious, terrified of silence. A polar researcher once said, "We don't just study the Arctic. The Arctic studies us." Each melting layer of permafrost reveals fragments of ancient life. Each shift in ocean current records our impact like ink on parchment. The planet remembers what we have done, and it whispers back in winds that never rest. But the Arctic does not only reveal loss, it also offers lessons. In the stillness of its glaciers lies a truth humans often forget. Change is not destruction. Change is survival in another form. The ice melts not because it surrenders, but because it transforms. It becomes water, movement, life. In the same way, humanity stands on the edge of transformation. One final chance to choose between extraction and evolution, between conquest and coexistence. The camera drifts across a landscape that feels almost extraterrestrial. Shattered plains of sea ice stretch toward infinity, dotted with machines, metal skeletons of progress glinting beneath a dying sun. A single polar bear wanders across the ice, its shadow long and fragile. The scene feels biblical, prophetic, a creature from another era walking through the aftermath of creation. In the distance, the northern lights begin to shimmer, but they are no longer symbols of wonder. They are signals of imbalance, flickers in the sky caused by solar storms intensified by a restless atmosphere. The Earth speaks in these colors, and the message is both beautiful and terrifying. Everything is connected and nothing is permanent. The Arctic is changing, and with it so is the idea of the world itself. Once a symbol of desolation, it has become a stage for humanity's greatest test, whether we can learn to exist without domination, whether we can respect the land that gives nothing easily, and forgive ourselves for what we've already taken. The ice groans in the distance, a deep, resonant sound like the breath of an ancient beast. It echoes across the empty expanse, across generations, across centuries of silence and discovery. It reminds us that the Arctic is not an enemy, not a victim, but a storyteller. A voice from the first age of the world, still speaking in the only language it knows: movement, light, and time. And though we may not listen, the Arctic continues to whisper its truth, that life endures in the most fragile of places, that beauty can exist in loss, and that even in melting, there is meaning. The horizon glows brighter, a band of light shimmering through the cold air. Somewhere beyond it, nations prepare their next moves, and the world turns again, restless, unstoppable, uncertain. Night returns to the Arctic, like a curtain falling slowly across a stage, not sudden, but gradual, tender, inevitable. The sun withdraws behind veils of cloud and mist, its light stretching into the farthest edges of the sky before dissolving completely. In its absence, the world breathes differently. The air grows colder, heavier, filled with a silence so profound it almost feels alive. From orbit, satellites trace the movement of the ice, vast, broken shapes drifting across the Black Sea. From below, submarines listen to the sounds of shifting glaciers, creaking and cracking like the spine of the Earth itself. And from the ground, the few humans who remain, explorers, scientists, wanderers, stand beneath the sky and witness the transformation. They know they are not just observers. They are participants in the unfolding of something vast and irreversible. There is a kind of sacredness in their solitude. The campfires flicker against the wind, illuminating faces half hidden by frost and reflection. Their breath hangs in the air like ghosts of thought, vanishing into the polar night. Conversations fade into whispers, about discovery, about loss, about the thin thread of humanity stretched across this endless white. One researcher records a message for her daughter back home. Her voice trembles as she speaks of beauty, how she watched the ice fracture under moonlight, revealing a river of liquid sapphire that glowed from within. She tells her child that the world is not dying, not yet. It is transforming, and we must listen to what it's trying to say. Elsewhere, a satellite signal falters. The aurora shimmers, green ribbons dancing over the frozen sea. To some, they look like spirits rising, the ghosts of ancient civilizations or the breath of a planet dreaming of its youth. To others, it is just light, electromagnetic poetry in motion, science rendered divine. But to the Arctic, it is simply heartbeat, steady, eternal, unbothered by the fragility of those who gaze upon it. The ice beneath begins to groan again. Waves surge unseen below the surface, ancient water moving through caverns carved before language existed. This is the ocean's memory, the same currents that once shaped continents that still whisper secrets to the moon. In these depths lie traces of all that has ever lived, all that will live again. Life, death, and rebirth, repeating endlessly beneath the ice. And above, humanity stands, fragile, magnificent, flawed, staring into the mirror of its own making. The Arctic has become that mirror, reflecting every contradiction of our kind. We build to preserve, we destroy to understand, we seek control over what we barely comprehend. Yet, even in our contradictions, there is beauty, a relentless, defiant hope that refuses to die, even in the coldest corners of the world. The documentary lens pans slowly across an ice shelf the size of a city. It fractures in silence, collapsing into the sea with a sound that seems to echo through time. The water rises and falls, and for a moment, it feels as though the earth itself is exhaling. The shot lingers long enough for the audience to feel the weight of it, but not long enough for despair to take root. Because even here, where endings unfold daily, there is a promise of renewal. Somewhere, far away, rain falls on a forest newly grown. A river begins to carve a new path through the land. Glaciers retreat, yes, but they reveal soil that has not seen the sun for tens of thousands of years. Seeds carried by the wind find their way into that earth. Life returns in forms unseen before. The planet adapts, it always has. The narrator's voice fades softer now, a tone of reflection, of closing. Perhaps the Arctic was never meant to remain unchanged, the voice says. Perhaps its purpose was to teach us that nothing stays still. Not the ice, not the sky, not even us. As the camera rises above the frozen expanse, the aurora bursts in full color. Green, violet, crimson, swirling across the heavens like the brushstrokes of a cosmic artist. Beneath it, the ice glows faintly blue, the ocean breathing just below. In the final moments, the music falls silent. The world holds its breath. The Arctic is both an ending and a beginning, a reminder that fragility and strength can coexist, that beauty can survive even in loss. The last light fades into the horizon, leaving nothing but the whisper of wind across ice. And in that silence, the planet speaks one final truth, not in words, but in feeling. We are not apart from this world. We are of it. The world quiets. The wind slows its eternal wandering. The last veil of twilight stretches thin across the Arctic sky, a ribbon of fading gold dissolving into the deep indigo of night. In that moment, the ice seems to glow from within, as if the planet itself were lit by memory. Every flake, every frozen ridge, holds the story of time, of beginnings and endings written in frost and silence. We have walked through this white wilderness in search of understanding, but what we found was something greater, reflection. The Arctic is not just a place at the edge of the world. It is a mirror to everything we are and everything we might become. Its silence does not accuse. It remembers. The voice of the narrator softens, the words carrying a rhythm like slow waves beneath the ice. The Arctic teaches us not through language, but through patience. It teaches us that stillness can be strength, and that even the coldest places are alive with purpose. Somewhere far below, in the dark heart of the polar ocean, ancient currents stir. They have carried the planet's lifeblood for eons, unseen, uncelebrated, but constant. These are the veins of the earth, and they remind us that life persists even when the surface trembles. In the distance, the northern lights bloom one final time. Their colors move like thought, slow, deliberate, filled with wonder. Green fades into violet, violet into gold, and then into the infinite blackness of the sky. The stars emerge, uncountable, unblinking, as if the universe itself has opened its eyes to watch what we will do next. The camera drifts higher, beyond the clouds, above the shimmering curtain of the atmosphere. From this distance, Earth glows softly, a fragile sphere of light suspended in the eternal dark. No borders, no nations, no divisions, only blue, white, and breath. The Arctic, once thought of as the end of the world, becomes its crown, a frozen jewel marking the top of everything that lives.